think that that's why what we do here is so important. Because this is a place where you can figure out what your voice sounds like wrapped around the truth. And so many places we don't nurture that and nourish that in each other. So we don't say, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, and we segregate it from the church, when in the truth it's never been segregated. Those two buddies have been shaking hands since the beginning of time, and some of the agenda has been specifically to wow, you've got me on a tangent. I'm going to but it is interesting to stay awake and to take it to your internal teacher. And to take it to your internal teacher, because they're in what we're going to talk about today is in the silence. The silence does not lie. We are sometimes allergic to our own silence, and we don't want to go to the divine, but the silence does not lie. And if you're willing to get still and to know God in a more intimate way, you will be given solutions and clear directions. So the one thing that I do know about you guys is that you're brilliant. This is the truth for all of us. Absolutely brilliant. Beautiful and brilliant and good and beautiful and holy. And sometimes we think to ourselves, like, how could that be true about me? Because immediately when your ears begin to hear that, you start to think, no, you must not really see me. I can't handle the truth. I want to be in resistance to that. I want to water that down. I don't want to own that truth about myself. Although it is the truth and the whole truth. And it can be kind of uncomfortable to face that truth. And the reason that sometimes we have these fractures in the world is because we haven't faced it about ourselves, so there's no way we're going to see it in our brother. The brilliance within ourselves has to be ignited within us, not with a permission slip, not with having to jump through a hula hoop, but because it is who we are. It's who you are. And we negate this truth. And we've been, I was talking about it this morning, a baby's born, and this baby is so brilliant. It's so beautiful that we literally lean in, and we're like, oh, baby. And it's so pure and brilliant and bright, and we just get fed just by being in its presence. And then it begins to get domesticated as we do, and we take on these ideas and these fractures and these broken identifiers. And so when somebody says, you're brilliant, we go, no, I'm not. You don't. This was nothing. This was so easy, or I could have done, Or conversely, we say, no, this took me years to do. Like, this wasn't, like, I really am not good at this. Like, it was so hard. You know what I mean? So we'll find a way to water down our brilliance, whether it comes from us or whether someone else is recognizing or shedding a positive focus on us. Sometimes we feel allergic to it, and we battle that more than anything. So, and we can do it with humor too. Many people are masters at using humor to dissipate their greatness. And although I love humor, it doesn't really help, to laugh away or take your brilliance lightly. To really take your brilliance lightly, it allows us to not be responsible for it. And which is kind of funny, though, because though these scripts, if we were to say, yes to our brilliance. If we were to say the brilliance of God flows through me, and this light is impeccable, and I can do all things, and I am a master at it, and I'm capable, and God brings me through it, to it and through it, and there's nothing that I can fail at when I go with God. If I really recognized and spoke to that truth, and I went around saying these things, people might think that I've gone a little bit mad. Interesting, right? But what people are so willing to accept are our broken scripts. We call and we claim our cancers and our catalytic events, and we say, I have cancer, or I'm depressed, or I'm broken, or I'm poor, or I'm this, or I'm that, and everybody says, yeah, you are. Yeah, that's too bad for you, and we accept that. And we have a mass conscious agreement around accepting our limitations. And so it's just a matter of getting comfortable with accepting our brilliance. And so we get to learn how to do that without having to make it an ego thing. This other way of being, this saying that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I can't do it, I don't know how, it's almost socially acceptable manslaughter that we're provoking on ourselves in a psychic way, in a spiritual way. And that goes completely accepted. Our spirits are carved out by these words and by these broken ideas that go unquestioned, that are simply not the truth for you. The truth is you're brilliant. You're here to shine. You're here to succeed. You're here to, cause greatness to express through you. So accepting this. May this talk, as we continue to converse about this, what I would love for this talk to do is to give you a possibility of seeing that within yourself and accepting it a little bit more today than you did yesterday, and not as much as you hopefully will accept it tomorrow, because it evolves, it grows through us. As we nurture it, it continues to grow. There's this story that Elizabeth Gilbert used in one of her talks, and it was about Tolstoy, and it was this fable of this beggar who spent his life sitting on top of a gold pot, and he was begging pennies from people who were walking by. He was begging for these pennies, unaware that he had this fortune, right beneath his nose. And the whole time he was thinking that he had nothing, and he was prophesying that truth. I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. And this is the same for us. Sometimes we go around the world saying, I don't have, I don't have, I don't have, instead of, within me dwells a light that cannot fail. That line is from the gospel of truth that was not included in the Bible. Go figure. Within you dwells a light that cannot fail. Actually, the whole line is, this is the perfect day, and within you dwells a light that cannot fail. Like, imagine if we really held on to that truth. So, in order to really step into the full acceptance of our brilliance, there are some steps that we can take. Silence, helpfulness, and creativity. And the first one is silence or stillness, to really get still. Oh, one other thing that she says, actually, Elizabeth Gilbert, she says, your treasure, your perfection is within you already, but to claim it, you must leave the busy commotions of the mind and abandon the desires of the ego and enter into the silence of the heart. And like I said, the silence of the heart does not lie. That's your true church. That's your true temple. That's your true compass. So the idea of getting still, this is something that all of us, no matter how still we get, can continue to practice, because it will continue to serve us. To really make it an important priority on your list, to make an appointment with your divine and daily. And there are many ways to do that, and so one of them that I use often is writing. I'll think about a contemplation, and then I'll sit down and I'll write to my divine. This is one of the tools that I teach in A Course in Creating, where every day I have the members of that community write down, Dear Divine, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? Today, not my whole life. Because you can't handle that far in advance, you know what I mean? If I could just get today right, then God can move the mountains on my behalf. And most of the time, I even know in practicing this lesson, I'm not actually willing to do the little things for God. I'm only looking for the big things. So I'm thinking, God, I think you're not trusting me enough. But the truth is, God gives me the little things and I don't do them. So, I could earn a greater degree of trust by really, paying attention and following through. And they're so little and they're so simple. Like, clean off your desk and call your mom. These simple things that we're unwilling to do. So take some space and in your day to really put that into action. Because this is where we'll find our happiness. Sometimes in the world, it feels like we're chasing our happiness like an addict. You know what I mean? But happiness does not require us to chase it. Yes, to follow it, but not to chase it. It'd be ridiculous to chase it when it's ours. Why would we chase it? It's like a map that we already have, and all we have to do is follow the next right step. But we've confused happiness with drama. So we think that drama and happiness are connected, and there's these high highs and these low lows, and we get used to being on the ups and downs of life, as opposed to happiness, which really sits very close to, peace and satisfaction. That's true happiness. An even keel. Meditation brings us to an even keel, so that we can experience what I like to call a flow. You were designed to be in the flow. The other day we were talking on A Course in Miracles, and we were talking about the basics of A Course in Miracles, which is you can choose love or fear. And I was listening to this teacher, and I was listening to this idea of choice. And I think that most of us are on the cusp of moving beyond choice, that we actually don't have to choose. We understand that choice for love is better than choice for fear, but what's more optimal is no choice, is mindfulness, is just being in what is and experience things being delivered to us. That's where I'm playing these days, and it's quite refreshing. And if I forget to allow God to bring me all that I need, then I can go back to making the choice for love. If I fall off course and I get fearful, or if I get agitated or judgmental, then I know that I can take the next step, which is just to choose for love. But after that, after I've chosen for love, then God makes all of the decisions on my behalf. Isn't that lovely? Who has experienced this? Yeah. So I'm not like, making shit up here. This is a possibility for all of us, to sincerely turn the wheel over to God, say, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And then do it. And the thing that happens is really scary. Things fall apart on God's watch. Why? Because they've fulfilled their necessary purpose. And once they fulfilled their necessary purpose, they fall away and they go downriver. And we go, wait, I don't like change. But, this is a part of evolution. We can't hold on to our chair in kindergarten and think that we're going to get to, college. We have to let go of things. And we have to trust that we don't need anything to arrive at our appointments, that we already have everything that we need to arrive to our appointments. So many of us come with graphs and with propaganda and with, things to prove our point. We come with a warehouse, of support so that everybody knows that we're telling the truth. Our truth is good. If you recognize your truth is God, then your truth is good. And you can speak the words of goodness wherever you go, and you don't need to pre-plan it. You don't need that. You can allow yourself to sincerely be channels. We talked about this before. We talked about, first being a victim and having everything happen to you, and finally saying, wait, I gotta make a change here. I'm going to move into warrior. And I'm going to say, wherever I go, there I am. So now I know that it's actually, I'm a part of creating this broken scenario that I don't want to experience. So let me take responsibility. And once I've taken responsibility, that's a great step. But then after that step is giving up responsibility and becoming a channel. St. Francis talked to us about being a channel for love, and that's a really optimal state to allow yourself to move into. But there's a step after that. Instead of being a channel for love, where you're being used to channel this love in the optimal direction, is to let go of the idea of channeling whatsoever and just be one with all things. So that would be a really peaceful and fluid place to be. And you could think about it as like a little drop of ocean. It forgets it's one with the ocean. So it builds itself a boat. And it sits in the boat. And it says, I got to protect myself from the ocean. And the ocean's like, what? Like, you're a part of me. Why are you building this boat? And you could think of the boat as a body. We jump into these bodies and we say, I got this, God. I'm going to do this, this human thing. And I'm going to forget that I'm a spirit. So we jump into these bodies or these boats and we start rowing upstream instead of down. We want to go against God. And we want to tell God, no, God, I got this. I got this. And God's like, man, she is making this hard for herself. You know what I mean? And then we recognize, wow, I'm making this hard for myself. Maybe I should at least row with God. And so we begin to evolve and we start to row with God and go with the flow. And then we feel a greater degree of peace. And then we still recognize, but I'm still separate from my God. And we start to look over the boat and say, what would it take for me to jump in the deep end with God? And it takes us a little while. So that's what it looks like when we move from victim into channel into our holy state of oneness. It's not that far off, and it's really not that special. I remember when I started teaching spirituality, I had friends that came to me and said, this is the year that I'm going to become enlightened. And I remember thinking to myself, why the hell would you want that? Like, that sounds horrible. And I used to think, I don't want that, because it sounds like you have to lose yourself, and you'd be separate, and you would be a weirdo, and nobody would like you, and we'd walk in the desert with sandals. I mean, all of these things I made up about that. But really, when I really asked my divine, what is that about? My divine said, you're enlightened every time you laugh. Every time you laugh, you reach that state of enlightenment. And so imagine living in that joyful space 24/7 consistently. And then look at the thoughts that you have that say that's not possible. Because right there is your invitation. So after we allow ourselves to really get intimate with this internal teacher, this ocean of love, after we allow ourselves to say, yeah, I think I want to go back to being not just in the flow with God, but being one with God, then we want to ask ourselves, how can I be helpful to this plan? Not, my will, but thy will, God. Like, really, what is thy will for me? And in this world, we seem to be seducing and courting all of our desires, but that's like putting the cart before the horse. We want to seduce God. God delivers the desires. It's almost like if you went to a restaurant and you were really hungry, and you said to the waiter, "I want to be full. I want to be full up. I want to eradicate this hunger I have." And the waiter said, "Great, there's a buffet. Eat all you want." And you looked at the buffet and you said, "No, I don't want food. I want to be full." And the waiter said, "Yeah, go eat the food." "No, I don't want food. I want to be full." We do that with God. We say, "I don't want to be holy. I want to be holy. I don't want God. I don't want God. I want to have these desires. I want to have these things fulfilled." Well, go to God. No. You're not hearing me. It's funny, and that's why God laughs. It's like, when will you wake up? I love you impeccably, and I have everything that you could ever want or desire, not just for yourself, but for the extension of my love out into the world. This whole illusion of scarcity, it's just the most horrific, and it's the greatest heresy that ever lived, that we all fell asleep to. Yeah, I guess that will work. But we're waking up. We're waking up, so that's the good news. So to be helpful, to ask God, where would you have me be helpful? And sometimes helpfulness comes in truth. Truth is very, very helpful. And we get scared of speaking our truth, We get scared of delivering our truth because sometimes the truth can piss people off. But if we allow ourselves to just commit to the truth no matter what, because things, like we said, will fall apart and fade away. That's part of the package. That's okay. Do not fear that. Do you think the trees fear the leaves falling? No, because they recognize their God is abundant. And as great as their flush and flow is this fall, they're going to have an even greater one next year, but they're still going to move through a spring and a winter and a summer. This is the same for you. If we don't allow ourselves to grow, we become stagnant and die. Not just in a physical way, but in a spiritual way. We become dull. So allow yourself to become naked. Allow yourself to let everything go with complete abandon if you're at that stage. And we do move through these different stages. So because your truth, your authentic, naked truth, is what will really serve the world. So there's this other story about Tolstoy that I really loved. And it was that another beggar story. So he goes to see, he was very committed to the inequities around wealth and poverty. And he's out walking the square one day and he sees this beggar. And the beggar says, give me some money. And he reaches into his pockets and he recognizes that he doesn't have any money. And he just feels so horrible, but that's his truth. He doesn't have any money. So he says to the beggar, "I am so sorry, brother. I don't have any money, and I wish I had something to give you." And the beggar lit up, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you have given me something so valuable. You've called me brother." So that was his truth. Like, sometimes when we tell the truth, like, "Hey, I don't have it to give," and all of a sudden the person in front of us is like, "That's exactly what I needed to hear." Like, just trust that your truth is the salve that will heal the wound that is in front of you exactly as it is. You don't have to make stuff up. Your truth, and you've noticed it. When you spoke your truth, the truth that you didn't want to tell, and somebody across the room starts to well up and shake their head and like, oh, geez, you too? And they say, yeah, me too. And I would never have dragged that carcass out of the closet. I would have never spoken that truth. And I'm so grateful that you're speaking that truth in this circle, because it's helping me to recognize that I don't have to hide my sickness, and we're only as sick as our secrets. So your truth is so important to the world. All of your truth. So the first step is, again, connecting with your divine. The second step is committing to being truthful and helpful. And I had a quote from this guy who said, every day, without a single dime, we too can make dramatic deposits into impoverished lives in the high calling of your daily work. If we are, whoever loves his brother lives in the light, and there is nothing in him that will make him stumble. I didn't want to tell you, I didn't say who said that, because I said it this morning when I was reading this to my husband, and his name was Howard Butt, and I don't know, it made me laugh. That. And I was like, all right, I can say everything else. Okay, so get still, connect with your divine, ask where I can be helpful, and then the third step is create. Create. That's why, my ministry is all about creativity. Everything that I do is about what do you have to say, how are you going to use your words to create. You connect with God, you get the vision, and then you speak the truth. And the word is such a creative thing, and thought is such a creative thing. So everything you can be used. So that's why this temple has to be really cleared out of all the fears, of all the unforgivenesses, so we can allow ourselves to channel the things that are supposed to be delivered through us out into the world. The last decade of my life has been I can't even say the last decade. I think every moment of my life has been dedicated to this ministry of creativity. It's healed me. When my mom died, we didn't have therapy, so I got lost in theater. And I got healed in theater. And I spoke my word, and I let my tears hit the stage underneath the illusion of a character. But it was really a space for me to express my grievance that was appropriate. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't choose any other way. It was magnificent, because not only was I healed, but I was able to use that art form to bring entertainment and a revelation to the audience. It wasn't for nothing. It wasn't just me, like spiritually, as Owen likes to say, spiritually masturbating in the back room. Thank you, Owen, for that. I don't know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Anyhow, So, in this creative nature of ours, it's not special. It's not some secret handshake or some special hoop that you got to jump through. You are designed to create. This is the most easiest thing that you could do. Songs and stories and moments and smiles and exchanges. Everything that you do is actually creating a world that's either good and beautiful and holy, or stagnant and suffering and thrilled with scarcity. You have that much power. Each of you have that much power. And so with this recipe of connecting with God, of recognizing where you're called to be helpful, and to turn on the idea that you are a creative genius, will be the very thing that helps us to awaken that positive focus in our lives. And when you create, just one other tool from A Course in Creating is to find your pack, your tribe, as you've come here today to find your pack, your tribe, because following the flock that flies in fellowship and freedom and faith and fearlessness allows you to have a springboard, a catalyst, a safety net. And it helps us to see that the ideas in our minds and our hearts are actually possible when we fly with what I call wingmen. And you know what I'm talking about if you took the Course in Creating. Wingmen are other people who do what you do, but they are, and so instead of in our society, most of the time as an actress, it was like you'd go on an audition and you're in competition with the other girl sitting next to you. So there's no camaraderie or bridge. But the way that I see it and teach it is that she's actually your wingman. Somebody's going to get the job. And you're going to get some jobs, and they're going to get some jobs, and there's enough jobs for everyone. That eliminates the idea of competition, and no one is going to get your job. No one's going to get your job. There's more than enough for everyone. So to eliminate that idea of scarcity, it helps us to move into community with greater authenticity and transparency, knowing that all good is all good. So be still, be helpful, be bold in your creativity. And that's the word.